The roses were wrong. That should have been my first warning. Their scent too sweet, too cloying, like perfume masking decay. But I was floating in that dreamy pre-wedding haze where everything feels symbolic and meaningful, even the way the morning light caught my engagement ring and scattered tiny rainbows across the dressing room wall. "You look perfect, Solstice," Ava whispered, adjusting my veil with trembling fingers. Her voice had an odd catch to it, but I chalked it up to emotion. That's what best friends do at weddings, right? They cry and fuss and make everything feel more momentous. I smoothed down the front of my dress, the silk cool against my palms. 6 months of planning had led to this moment. 6 months of Mark's gentle teasing about my spreadsheets and timelines, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners as he called me his beautiful control freak. The door burst open and my sister Ava tumbled in, already dabbing at her eyes. The flowers are all set up, the string quartet is tuning, and, oh my God, look at you. She wrapped me in a careful hug, mindful of my hair and makeup. Mark's not going to know what hit him. If only she knew how prophetic those words would turn out to be. The ceremony started exactly on schedule naturally. I'd timed it down to the minute. The late October sun streamed through stained glass, painting everything in jewel tones. Mark waited at the altar, looking devastating in his tux, and for a moment my heart actually skipped. This was it. This was my happily ever after, my proof that love could last, that not everyone was like my father. I should have known better. I made it through most of my vows, voice steady despite the emotion threatening to choke me. Mark's eyes never left mine as he promised to love, honor, cherish. His words were perfect, practiced. The minister had just asked if anyone had cause to object when the chapel doors slammed open. "I object." The voice rang out clear and cold as winter. A woman in a red dress stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the autumn afternoon. "I object because the groom is still legally married." To me, the silence that followed was absolute. I turned to Mark, waiting for him to laugh, to explain that this was some horrible mistake, but his face had gone slack with shock, then tight with guilt. In that moment, I knew. My stomach dropped as if I'd missed a step in the dark. "Savannah," he breathed, and that single word, that name I'd never heard before, contained volumes of history and secrets. The woman, Savannah, strode down the aisle, her heels clicking against marble like gunshots. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That you could just start over with your pretty new bride while our divorce was still pending?" Murmurs rippled through the guests. I felt their stares like physical touches, their pity and horror pressing against my skin. My vision tunneled until all I could see was Mark's face, watching him struggle to find words. "I can explain," he started, reaching for my hand. I jerked away. "Don't." My voice came out surprisingly steady. "Don't touch me." From the corner of my eye, I saw Ava shift uncomfortably, her hands twisting the bouquet she held. Something about her posture, her careful stillness, sent a second wave of nausea through me. She knew, my best friend, my maid of honor. She'd known. The realization hit me like a physical blow, but I refused to crumple, refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I felt something crystallize inside me, hard and sharp and cold. I turned to face our guests, my smile as brittle as frozen glass. "I'm so sorry, everyone. It seems there's been a terrible mistake. Please enjoy the reception. The food and wine are already paid for. Consider it a very expensive party." Scattered, nervous laughter. More whispers. I walked down the aisle with my head high, past Savannah with her triumphant smirk, past the shocked faces of friends and family. My heels clicked against marble in perfect rhythm, counting down steps to freedom. It wasn't until I reached the chapel doors that I allowed myself one glance back. Mark stood frozen at the altar, mouth still working silently. Ava wouldn't meet my eyes. And there in the front row, my father watched with an expression I recognized all too well, the same look he'd worn when my mother discovered his affairs. I pushed through the heavy doors into autumn sunshine that suddenly felt too bright, too harsh. My carefully constructed future lay in ruins behind me, but something else was rising from the ashes, something that tasted like rage and promise and possibility. They thought they knew me, sweet, organized solstice who always colored inside the lines. They had no idea what I was capable of, but they were about to find out. I smiled, and this time there was nothing brittle about it. The October wind bit through my wedding dress as I stood on the hotel balcony, watching guests trickle out of the reception I'd never attended. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from Ava, from Christian, from what felt like everyone except the two people I most wanted to hear from. And wasn't that telling? I'd been up here for hours, letting the cold numb everything until my thoughts finally started making sense. The sun had set, leaving me in twilight, surrounded by the potted mums I'd chosen to match our autumn theme. Everything perfectly coordinated, perfectly planned. What a joke. The sliding door whispered open behind me. Saul, Ava's voice tentative. You're going to freeze out here. I didn't turn around. How long did you know? Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken things. Finally, she sighed. I found out 3 weeks ago. I wanted to tell you, but 3 weeks. The words came out sharp as icicles. 3 weeks of dress fittings and flower arrangements, and you just, what? Decided to let me walk down that aisle anyway? It wasn't that simple. She moved closer, and I could smell her perfume, the same scent she'd worn since college, when we'd shared everything. Mark came to me when Savannah first contacted him. He said he was handling it, that the divorce would be finalized before the wedding. He seemed so sincere, Saul. And then, when things got complicated, my laugh sounded foreign to my own ears. Let me guess, he convinced you it would hurt me more to know, that it was kinder to keep me in the dark. Something like that. Her voice had gone small. He can be very persuasive when he wants to be. I finally turned to face her. Ava stood huddled in her bridesmaid's dress, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. For a moment, I saw us as we used to be. Two girls sharing secrets and dreams, swearing nothing would ever come between us. The memory made what I had to say next harder. Did you sleep with him? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. What? No. God, Sewell, I would never. But you knew he was sleeping with someone else, besides Savannah. The way she froze told me everything. How did you... The bartender at the rehearsal dinner, the one who kept giving me these pitying looks. She pulled me aside earlier. Apparently Mark's been bringing different women there for months. She recognized him from the engagement photos I'd posted everywhere. Ava pressed her hands to her face. I'm so sorry. I should have... Should have what? Been my friend? Told me the truth? Protected me from making the biggest mistake of my life? Each question landed like a blow. Instead, you helped him, covered for him. God, all those times you encouraged me to trust the process when I worried about wedding details. You were just buying him time, weren't you? I thought I was helping. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. You were so happy, so excited about the wedding. And after everything with your dad, I couldn't be the one to ruin that for you. The mention of my father cracked something open inside me. You know what the worst part is? When I saw Savannah standing there in the chapel, my first thought wasn't even about Mark. It was wondering if you knew, if my best friend had betrayed me too. Sul, please, don't. I moved past her toward the door, then paused. You know what's funny? All those years watching my mom try to forgive my dad, I swore I'd never be that person. Never be the one who didn't see it coming. Turns out I was right. I'm actually worse. At least she didn't have her best friend helping him lie to her. I stepped inside, leaving Ava on the balcony. The hotel room was a mess of wedding preparations. My overnight bag, makeup scattered across the vanity, the wedding planner I'd filled with color-coded tabs and detailed timelines. A life I'd planned down to the minute, built on foundations of sand. My phone buzzed again. A text from Braxton, my coworker. Just heard. Need anything? Below it was a message from Mark. Please let me explain. Meet me at our spot tomorrow? I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The smart thing would be to walk away. Delete their numbers, change my locks, start fresh. That's what my therapist June would advise. She'd been warning me about my trust issues for months. But as I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of my almost marriage, a different path started taking shape, one that would require precision planning, careful manipulation, and a complete willingness to burn everything to the ground. I picked up my wedding planner and opened to a blank page. Time to start a new list. The coffee shop's morning rush swirled around me as I traced my finger along the rim of my third espresso. My laptop screen glowed with open tabs. Mark's social media, his company's website, every digital breadcrumb I could follow. Amazing how much of your life ends up online when you're not expecting anyone to look too closely. Mind if I join you? I looked up to find Braxton holding his own coffee, expression carefully neutral. Of course he'd know I'd be here. It was 2 blocks from our office, and I was supposed to be on my honeymoon. The empty chair across from me seemed to mock us both. Sure, I said, closing my laptop. Though I should warn you, I'm apparently toxic right now. Eva told me half the office is taking sides. He settled into the chair, pushing a paper bag toward me. Blueberry scone, and the office isn't taking sides. They're just processing. Like how Mark's assistant processed right out of her job this morning. The news had hit my inbox an hour ago. Her resignation effective immediately. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Braxton's eyes narrowed slightly. How did you know about that? I have my sources. I didn't mention that those sources included the IT guy who owed me a favor, or the encrypted emails I'd found. Same way I know about the missing client funds Mark's been trying to cover up. Solstice? Braxton's voice dropped lower. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm not thinking of doing anything. I took a deliberate sip of coffee. I'm just gathering information, like how Mark's been embezzling money through fake vendor accounts, or how Ava helped him doctor the books when she did our company's audit last quarter. The color drained from Braxton's face. How long have you known? About the embezzlement? Since this morning? About Ava's involvement? I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. That's brand new, thanks to your reaction just now. He ran a hand through his hair, shoulders slumping. Look, I only suspected something was off with the numbers. I never had proof, and by the time I started putting pieces together, you were already engaged. And you didn't want to be the bearer of bad news? The bitter taste in my mouth had nothing to do with coffee. You know, I'm getting really tired of people making decisions about what I can't handle. That's not fair. No. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd found buried in Mark's cloud storage. These are from his trip to Aspen 3 months ago. Funny how he told me it was a business retreat, but all the pictures are him and his assistant looking very unbusinesslike. Braxton's expression shifted from defensive to concerned. Sol, what exactly are you planning to do with all this? Nothing illegal. I started gathering my things, just making sure I understand exactly what kind of man I almost married and exactly who helped him fool me. Wait. His hand caught my wrist as I stood. I know you're hurt. You have every right to be. But revenge won't make it better. I looked down at where his fingers pressed against my pulse point, remembering how many times we'd worked late together, how many coffee runs and shared lunches, how many opportunities he'd had to warn me. You know what's interesting? I kept my voice light. Everyone keeps telling me how I feel, what I should do, what's best for me. But nobody's asked what I want. Okay. He released my wrist, sat back. What do you want, Solstice? The question hit harder than I expected. What did I want? To hurt them like they hurt me? To expose every lie, every betrayal? To prove I wasn't as naive as they all thought? I want the truth, I finally said. All of it. And then I want everyone involved to face consequences for their choices, including me. Including you? I ignored red flags, dismissed warnings, chose comfortable lies over uncomfortable questions. I shouldered my bag. But at least I can own my mistakes. Can they say the same? He was quiet for a long moment. The assistant, Rachel, she didn't quit. She's going to the FBI with evidence. My heart stuttered. How do you know? Because I helped her gather it. He pulled out a USB drive, set it on the table between us. Everything's here, the fake accounts, the wire transfers, the altered records. She's meeting with them tomorrow morning. I stared at the tiny device that could destroy everything. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the whole truth. And because whatever you decide to do next, he stood, meeting my eyes steadily. I want you to understand exactly what you're walking into. I picked up the drive, its weight insignificant compared to the choices it represented. The cafe's warmth suddenly felt stifling. Thank you, I said, and meant it, for finally letting me decide for myself. I left him there, mind already racing with possibilities. The game had changed, but maybe that's exactly what I needed. Savannah's house was exactly what I'd expected. Modern, minimalist, expensive, the kind of place that screamed successful lawyer without saying a word. What I hadn't expected was her opening the door with red-rimmed eyes and a half-empty wine glass. You've got nerve showing up here, she said, but stepped aside to let me in. I moved past her into a living room bathed in afternoon light. No wedding photos, I noticed. No evidence Mark had ever lived here. Just clean lines and abstract art that probably cost more than my car. I brought something you might want to see. I pulled out the USB drive, set it on her glass coffee table. Though I'm guessing you already know about the embezzlement. She went very still. How did you? The same way I found out about the pregnancy. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood. Red liquid spread like blood between us. He told you? He didn't have to. I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. Your medical records were in his email, along with the messages about the procedure he insisted you get 2 months ago. Savannah sank onto the couch, hands trembling. I never wanted. He said it would ruin everything, that the timing was wrong. The timing? I couldn't help the bitter laugh. You mean because he was planning to marry me? No, she looked up, eyes sharp despite the wine. Because the FBI was closing in. A baby would have complicated his exit strategy. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The wedding was his alibi, a respectable new wife, a fresh start, a way to look innocent when everything fell apart. And I was the loose end he needed to tie up. She gestured at the USB drive. What's on that? Everything. Account numbers, transfer records, emails. Enough to bury him. Your name's all over it too. Fear flickered across her face. I never touched the money. Any paperwork with my signature was forged. I know. I sat across from her, careful to avoid the spreading wine stain. That's why I'm here. The FBI is moving tomorrow morning. You need to get ahead of it. Why are you helping me? Suspicion crept into her voice. I ruined your wedding. No, you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. And now? I met her gaze steadily. Now I want to return the favor. She studied me for a long moment. There's more. What aren't you telling me? Ava, my former maid of honor. She's involved. She helped cover up the embezzlement during audits, and I swallowed hard. I think she and Mark were planning something bigger, something that would have left us both taking the fall. Savannah reached for the USB drive, turning it over in her hands. You know, when I first found out about you, I hated you. Thought you were just another foolish woman he'd charmed. But you're not what I expected. Neither are you. I stood, stepping carefully around the spilled wine. The FBI agent's name is Torres. Tell him everything. And Savannah, I'm sorry about the baby. Her laugh was hollow. Me too. Though maybe it's better this way. One less person for Mark to destroy. I was almost to the door when she called after me. What are you going to do now? Now? I thought of the second copy of the USB drive in my bag, of the carefully worded emails I'd sent that morning. Now I'm going to make sure everyone pays for their choices, including Mark. Be careful, she warned. He's more dangerous than you know. So am I. Outside, the autumn air felt cleaner somehow. My phone buzzed, a text from Ava asking if I was okay. Below it was a message from June reminding me about our appointment tomorrow. And there, at the bottom, was Mark. Missing you. Can we talk? I typed out a response before I could second-guess myself. Actually, yes. Let's meet tomorrow. There's something I need to tell you. His reply came instantly. Our usual spot? Noon? Perfect, I wrote back, then added, I think it's time we were honest with each other. The irony of those words made me smile as I walked to my car. In my bag, the second USB drive felt like a live wire, crackling with potential energy. Tomorrow, Mark would learn exactly how honest I could be. My phone buzzed again. Braxton this time. Rachel just finished her FBI interview. You sure about this? I thought of Savannah's trembling hands, of Ava's betrayal, of all the women Mark had used and discarded. Absolutely sure, I replied. Everything's going according to plan. But as I drove home, Savannah's warning echoed in my head. Mark was dangerous. The question was, had I finally become dangerous enough to match him? June's office always smelled like lavender and old books, a combination that usually calmed me. Today, it just made my stomach churn as I perched on the familiar leather couch, watching her read through the printouts I'd brought. She paused, adjusting her glasses. This is quite extensive, Solstice. I've been busy. I picked at a loose thread on my sleeve. Turns out insomnia is great for investigative work. I can see that. She set the papers aside, fixing me with that steady gaze I'd come to both appreciate and dread. What concerns me is how much energy you're putting into this revenge plan instead of processing your trauma. I am processing it. I gestured at the papers. By doing something about it. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're avoiding the pain by focusing on action. On control. The word hit like a slap. Control. Wasn't that what had gotten me into this mess? My desperate need to believe I could manage everything, predict everything, protect myself from exactly this kind of betrayal? Maybe I'm tired of being the one who gets hurt, I said finally. Maybe I want them to understand what it feels like. And what about what it feels like for you, right now? She leaned forward slightly. When was the last time you actually let yourself feel the grief of what happened? My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark about our upcoming meeting. I ignored it, but June noticed. Still in contact with him? It's necessary for the plan. Is it? Or is it a way to maintain connection, even a painful one? I stood abruptly, moving to the window. Outside, leaves skittered across the parking lot, red and gold and dying. You don't understand. This isn't just about the wedding anymore. Mark and Ava, they've hurt other people. They're still hurting people. Someone has to stop them. And that someone has to be you? Yes. The force of my own response startled me, because everyone else who knew just stood by and watched. They all had their reasons, their excuses, but they watched him destroy lives and did nothing. Like your mother's friends did with your father? The parallel hit hard enough to make me grip the windowsill. That's different. Is it? Her voice was gentle. Or are you trying to fight a battle you couldn't win as a child? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Braxton. Emergency. Mark knows about Rachel's FBI interview. He's cleaning out accounts now. My hands started shaking. I have to go. Solstice? No, I mean, I really have to go. Right now. I grabbed my bag, already pulling up my banking app. Mark's making his move early. June stood, concern etching her features. Whatever you're planning, please be careful. Revenge might feel like justice, but it can consume you if you're not careful. I paused at the door, thinking of the elaborate trap I'd set, of all the carefully placed pieces ready to fall. What if I'm already consumed? Then ask yourself what's left when the fire burns out. She moved to her desk, wrote something quickly. This is my personal number. Call me anytime. Promise me. I took the paper, folded it carefully into my wallet. I promise. And June, thank you for everything. Outside, my phone exploded with notifications. Braxton had sent screenshots of account transfers. Eva was calling. Even Ava had texted. We need to talk. It's urgent. I got in my car, hands steady now, as I pulled up Mark's contact. His smiling profile picture stared back at me. The same one from our engagement photos. The same lie. Change of plans, I typed. Meet me now, usual spot. His response came instantly. Can't. Dealing with work emergency. I know about the accounts, Mark. All of them. Meet me now or I call the FBI myself. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, 30 minutes. I started the car, mind racing. Everything was accelerating, spinning faster than I'd planned. June's words echoed in my head. What's left when the fire burns out? My phone buzzed one more time. Savannah. Be careful. He's cornered now. That makes him dangerous. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. Her eyes were harder, her smile sharper. She looked dangerous, too. I know, I texted back. Then I pulled out into traffic, heading toward the coffee shop where Mark had proposed, where he'd first woven his web of lies, where in 30 minutes everything would either fall into place or fall apart completely. Either way, there was no turning back now. The coffee shop windows reflected twin versions of reality. The warm interior where Mark waited, and the gray storm clouds gathering outside. I stood in the space between, watching him check his phone every 30 seconds, his usual composure cracking around the edges. Thunder rumbled as I pushed open the door. The same barista who'd warned me about Mark's infidelity gave me a concerned look, but I kept walking. Mark's head snapped up, relief washing over his features before he caught himself. Solstice. He stood, pulling out a chair. Always the gentleman, even now. I was worried you. Save it. I sat across from him, placing my phone on the table, recording app running. Where's the money, Mark? His smile flickered. What money? The client accounts, the ones you've been draining all morning. I pulled out printed screenshots, spread them across the table. Or should we talk about Rachel's FBI interview first? The color drained from his face. You don't understand. Actually, I do. Better than you think. I leaned forward. What I don't understand is why Ava's name is on half these transfers. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, then calculation. Ava? No, she just did the audits. She wouldn't. My laugh felt like broken glass. Still lying? Even now? I pulled up the email chain on my phone, turned it toward him. She's been helping you move money for months. The only question is whether she was playing you or you were playing her. Before he could respond, the door chimed. Ava walked in, freezing when she saw us. Her mascara was smudged, hair wild like she'd been running her hands through it. Don't stop on my account, I said, gesturing to the empty chair. Join us. We were just discussing your extracurricular activities. She sat slowly, eyes darting between us. Mark, what did you tell her? Nothing yet. I answered for him, but he was about to explain why you both thought I'd make the perfect fall guy for your little scheme. Thunder cracked closer, making the windows rattle. Mark's hands clenched around his untouched coffee. It wasn't like that, Ava whispered. We never meant to get caught, I finished. Yeah, that part's clear. What I can't figure out is whether you were working together the whole time or if this is just a spectacular coincidence. They exchanged a look that told me everything. How long? My voice came out steadier than I felt. 6 months, Ava said, just as Mark said. A year. Another crack in their united front. Interesting. The wedding was your idea, wasn't it? I asked Mark. Perfect cover story. Perfect alibi. Perfect way to make me look complicit when it all fell apart. I loved you, he protested. That part was real. Was it? Or did you just love how convenient I was? I pulled out one final paper, a bank statement with a very specific transfer highlighted, because this payment to Ava the day after our engagement suggests otherwise. Ava's sharp intake of breath was almost drowned out by the rain now pounding against the windows. Mark's face had gone completely still. You weren't supposed to find that, he said quietly. I wasn't supposed to find a lot of things. I stood, gathering the papers. The FBI will be interested in all of it, though, especially the offshore accounts. Wait, Ava grabbed my arm. Please, I can explain everything. Can you explain why my best friend helped orchestrate my humiliation? Why she took money to watch me walk into a trap? I jerked away from her grip. Save your explanations for your lawyer. You don't want to do this. Mark's voice had dropped to that dangerous register I'd never heard before our wedding day. Think about what you're risking. I have. I picked up my phone, stopped the recording. That's why I already sent copies of everything to Agent Torres this morning, and to every board member at your firm, and to that reporter who's been investigating financial fraud cases. The look that passed between them was pure panic now. Outside, lightning split the sky. You're bluffing, Mark said, but his voice shook. Am I? Check your email. Should be hitting inboxes right about. I glanced at my watch. Now. Their phones buzzed simultaneously. I watched their faces as they read, as they realized exactly how thoroughly I'd destroyed them. Why? Ava's voice cracked. Why not just turn us in? Why all this? Because I needed to see it, to see you both try to lie your way out one last time. I turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Mark? Savannah says hello. I walked out into the storm, letting the rain wash away the last traces of who I used to be. Behind me, through the window, I could see them frantically typing on their phones, making calls that wouldn't save them. My own phone buzzed. Braxton. FBI just arrived at the office. You okay? I watched lightning fracture the sky again and smiled. I will be. The storm chased me all the way to the office, where red and blue lights strobed against rain-slicked windows. I sat in my car, watching FBI agents escort people out under black umbrellas. Mark emerged in handcuffs, head high despite the circumstances, always performing, even now. My phone lit up with Ava's face. Where are you? She demanded when I answered. Everyone's saying, I know what they're saying. I watched Ava being let out next, mascara running down her cheeks. Is Braxton still there? Yeah, he's talking to the agents. Saul, what did you do? What needed to be done? I hung up, stepping out into the rain. The wind whipped my hair around my face as I walked toward the building's entrance. Agent Torres met me at the door, his badge gleaming under fluorescent lights. Ms. Walker, we need to ask you some questions. I assumed you would. I followed him inside, past shocked colleagues and whispered conversations. My heels clicked against marble floors, echoing like heartbeats. They'd set up in the conference room, the same one where I'd first met Mark 3 years ago. He sat at the far end now, hands cuffed in front of him, Ava beside him looking small and scared. Their lawyers hadn't arrived yet. Solstice? Mark's voice carried that familiar warmth, like he could still charm his way out of this. You don't have to do this. Actually, I do. I sat across from them, placing my phone and a small notebook on the table. But first, I want you both to know something. Ava wouldn't meet my eyes. Sol, please. I want you to know that I understand. I opened the notebook, my wedding planner, repurposed for a different kind of orchestration. I understand why you did it, the thrill of taking what you wanted, of thinking you were smarter than everyone else, of feeling powerful instead of afraid. Mark's smile faltered. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I turned to Agent Torres. Did you find the second set of accounts? The ones under his mother's maiden name? Mark's face went slack. Beside him, Ava made a small, wounded sound. You said those were just for tax purposes, she whispered. You said I wouldn't be implicated. He lied, Ava. That's what he does. I met her eyes finally. The question is, are you going to keep protecting him? The conference room fell silent except for the storm raging outside. I could see the moment Ava's loyalty shattered, could practically hear it breaking. The Cayman accounts, she said quietly. Those weren't my idea. And the wedding? She turned to Mark, voice strengthening. Tell her about the wedding, about what you really planned. Mark lunged across the table, but the handcuffs caught him short. Shut up. He was going to frame you for everything. Ava rushed out. After the honeymoon, he was going to transfer the missing money into your accounts, make it look like you'd been stealing for years. I helped him set it up. I'm so sorry, Saul. I'm so sorry. Agent Torres signaled, and two other agents moved to separate them. Mark's face had transformed into something ugly, unfamiliar. You think this makes you clever? He snarled at me. You think you've won? I built this whole thing. Everything you know about finance, about business, I taught you. You're nothing without me. Lightning flashed, throwing harsh shadows across his features. In that moment, I saw my father in him, the same entitled rage, the same inability to accept consequences. You're wrong. I stood, gathering my things. I learned everything I needed to know from watching you underestimate me. I turned to Agent Torres. The notebook has everything: dates, accounts, conversations, and my phone has recordings of both of them admitting involvement. I assume that's enough? He nodded, already reaching for the evidence. More than enough. We'll need you to make a formal statement. Of course. I moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Mark? Savannah's testimony should be interesting, especially the part about the baby. The sound he made was barely human. Ava's eyes went wide with fresh horror. Outside the conference room, Braxton waited. You okay? No. I watched agents lead Mark and Ava in separate directions, their lawyers finally arriving too late to help. But I will be. Was it worth it? He asked quietly. Getting justice? I thought about June's warning about revenge consuming me, about the cost of fighting fire with fire, but I also thought about every woman Mark had hurt, about every lie Ava had helped him tell. It wasn't about justice, I said finally. It was about making sure they couldn't do this to anyone else. The storm was passing now, late afternoon sun breaking through clouds. In its light, I could almost see the shape of who I might become. Someone stronger, yes, but also someone who understood the difference between vengeance and protection. Come on, Braxton said gently. Let's get out of here. I followed him out, leaving behind the ruins of my old life and the architects of its destruction. Sometimes, I was learning, you have to burn everything down to build something true. The autumn wind scattered leaves across my father's gravestone as I placed the newspaper clipping against the marble. The headline was small, just a few lines about Mark's guilty plea and the restitution ordered, but it felt monumental seeing it in print. I thought I'd find you here. Ava's voice carried across the cemetery. She picked her way between headstones, coffee cups in hand. You okay? Better than okay. I accepted the coffee, letting its warmth seep into my fingers. Did you see Ava's sentencing got moved up? Yeah, Christian told me she's cooperating fully now. She settled beside me on the cold ground. You never told me why you chose today to come here. I traced our father's name with my free hand, because I finally understand something he never did, about choices, about consequences, and about running away. The gentleness in her voice nearly undid me. That too. I took a sip of coffee, letting memories surface. Remember how he always had explanations, excuses, how nothing was ever really his fault? Like father, like former fiancé. Exactly. I pulled out June's latest letter from my pocket. She still wrote them weekly, even though I'd stopped needing therapy sessions. She says I've been fighting him all along, through Mark, through Ava, through everyone who thought they could write my story for me. Ava leaned against my shoulder. And now? Now I'm writing my own. I stood, brushing leaves from my clothes. Speaking of which, have you checked your email today? She pulled out her phone, brow furrowing as she read. You're starting a consulting firm for fraud prevention? With Braxton and Savannah. I couldn't help smiling at her surprise. Turns out dismantling a complex financial fraud scheme looks pretty good on a resume. We've already got 3 clients lined up. Soul, that's... She stopped, looking past me. Is that who I think it is? I turned to see Ava standing at the cemetery entrance, uncertainty written across her face. She looked smaller somehow, without her designer clothes and careful makeup. I asked her to come. I said quietly, there's something she needs to hear. Eva squeezed my hand before walking away, leaving me to face the ghost of my former best friend. Ava approached slowly, like she expected me to change my mind. I got your message, she said when she reached me, about wanting closure. Not closure. I gestured to our father's grave. Understanding. She read the headstone, realization dawning. The man who taught you about betrayal. And about forgiveness. I met her eyes steadily. Not the kind that forgets or excuses, the kind that sets you free. I don't deserve. This isn't about what you deserve. I cut her off. It's about who I choose to be, and I choose not to carry the weight of hating you anymore. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I've thought about it every day. How I could have stopped him, warned you. How I let him convince me that hurting you was somehow protecting you. I know. I pulled out an envelope, held it out. That's why I brought you this. Her hands shook as she opened it. A character reference for my sentencing? You did wrong things for complicated reasons, just like he did. I nodded toward the grave. The difference is you owned it. You chose to make it right. Not soon enough. No, but you chose. I stepped back, feeling lighter somehow. That's the thing about choices, Ava. We keep getting to make new ones. She clutched the letter like a lifeline. I don't know how to start over. Yes, you do. I turned to leave, then paused. By the way, when you get out, come find me. The firm could use someone who knows exactly how these schemes work. I walked away before she could respond, joining Eva by the car. The late afternoon sun painted everything in amber light, making even the cemetery look hopeful. You're really offering her a job? Eva asked as we drove away. After everything? I watched the cemetery recede in the mirror, thinking about choices and consequences and the stories we tell ourselves about both. You know what I learned from all this? I said finally. The opposite of betrayal isn't revenge. It's creating something new from the ashes of what burned. Ava smiled, understanding dawning. And that's what you're building? Something new? Something true, I corrected, feeling the future unfold before us like an open road. Something entirely my own.
I never chose to be born, and it seems neither did my parents want me at first. My mother often recounts her youthful days, filled with naivety and a headstrong love for a man whose loyalty faltered easily. Her unexpected pregnancy with me, Mia, marked a turning point. She considered not having me, but our grandparents intervened decisively. In those days, single parenting was rare, so my parents married under pressure and I arrived into the world not long after, much to my father's dismay. He often lamented the loss of his youth, casting me not as his child, but as a burden that held him back from the life he envisioned. For a decade, it was just the four of us in a small house. I walked on eggshells around my father. My mother was perpetually busy with household chores, and my father's discontent grew each day. Then, my sister Mila was born, the child they truly desired. Suddenly, I was pushed further to the margins. "Watch, Mila. Be quiet. Why can't you be more like her?" became the regular refrains of my existence. Mila received all the new clothes, praise, and love, while I got accustomed to disappointment and took on most of the household duties without thanks. Cooking was the only task I cherished. There was something magical about blending ingredients and creating new flavors. I still remember the first time I made my special lasagna for a family gathering. My aunt was amazed, crediting my mother, who accepted the compliments while I stood forgotten. The kitchen became my refuge, a place where I could find peace away from the shadow of Mila's favoured status. In high school, my culinary skills flourished. I managed to impress even my father, whose gruff approval meant the world to me. My dreams grew as well. I envisioned owning a bustling restaurant. When I finally voiced this ambition, the response was discouraging. My father dismissed the idea as a sure path to failure, and Mila mockingly suggested I work at a fast food chain instead. Undeterred, I pursued culinary school, funded reluctantly by my father, who declared it my inheritance, leaving everything else to Mila. Culinary school was a revelation. For the first time, I felt valued and recognised for my skills. My classmates and instructors appreciated my work, and I thrived in this new environment. However, graduating without the funds to start my own place, I had to return home, where the stark difference between my passionate college life and my family's indifference hit hard. Now a qualified chef, I was once again relegated to the role of cook, my culinary degree merely a decoration. Despite the challenges, I landed a job as an Pan-Asian chef at a local restaurant. The pay was minimal, but it was a start. At home, I was burdened with endless chores, my mother's way of reminding me of my duties. But I didn't let it deter me. I spent every free moment planning and dreaming of my restaurant. I knew that one day I would make it happen, and when that day came, I would show everyone the true extent of Mia's capabilities. Each day felt the same, but with each dish I prepared and every plan I devised, I was slowly but surely paving the way to my own success. I put in endless hours of hard work at the local diner, while my sister Mila was endlessly pampered with every luxury I ever dreamt of. The day Mila began high school, my dad came home wearing a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Mila, honey," he shouted, beckoning her outside to reveal a gleaming new car in our driveway. A painful reminder of the disparities between us. "But I can't even drive yet," Mila exclaimed, eyes wide with surprise. Dad just laughed and tossed her the keys. "You will soon. My girl deserves the best from the very beginning." I clenched my jaw so tightly at the sight that I tasted blood. When I turned 15, all I got was a used bike, necessary only for commuting to my part-time job. The gifts didn't stop at the car. Every week, Mila received something new. The latest smartphone, a high-end laptop, designer, outfits, even a bedroom makeover that transformed her space into a 4-star suite, while I was stuck in a room that hadn't changed since I was 10, complete with peeling wallpaper and a squeaky old bed. Feeling more like an outsider each day, I contemplated moving out to escape the glaring inequality. I could maybe share an apartment, anything to feel less invisible. But then, Christmas rolled around. Determined to make a statement, I spent my savings on thoughtful gifts for everyone. Lottery tickets for the big jackpot, not just cheap scratch-offs. On Christmas morning, I handed out the tickets, trying to hide my anticipation. My mother's face dropped with disappointment, and my father scoffed, dismissing them as trivial. Mila didn't even bother to open hers, simply rolling her eyes. "Oh, Mia, that's really considerate," my mum patronised before suggesting that since I hadn't got them anything of value, I shouldn't expect anything in return. The hurt was palpable. Without a word, I grabbed the tickets back. "Fine, Merry Christmas then," I declared and stormed out, leaving their stunned faces behind. Seeking solace, I ended up at the diner, sharing drinks and stories of familial woes with my co-worker Ellie. It wasn't the festive celebration one might hope for, but it was genuine, and I didn't feel so alone. Back at work after the holidays, I almost ignored a call from an unknown number, dismissing it as likely spam. Yet, when it rang again, curiosity won over, and I answered. It was the lottery commission informing me that one of my tickets had won, $910, $100 after taxes. Shocked and exhilarated, I raced home bursting with the news, only to be met with demands from my family claiming the prize as their own. "No," I found myself saying firmly, the years of feeling overlooked fueling my resolve. "This is my ticket, my chance, and I'm going to use it to start my own restaurant." Arguments erupted, but I stood my ground. When my mother coldly told me to leave if I couldn't accept their terms, I finally saw the clear picture of how conditional their affection was. "Fine," I said quietly, my decision made. I packed my essentials and left, their astonished expressions etched in my mind. My first destination was the lottery office to claim my prize, setting into motion the first day of my new life, driven by my dreams and sustained by my determination to rise above the inequalities that had long defined my place in our family. After claiming my lottery winnings, I immediately sought out a real estate agent. "I need an apartment, something available right away," I told the agent, who looked quite surprised by my urgency. By evening, I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a respectable neighbourhood. It was simple, but it was completely mine. With no furniture yet, I settled down with some takeout and began browsing through restaurant equipment catalogues on my phone, filled with a sense of hope I hadn't experienced in years. My first task was creating a solid business plan. I dedicated weeks to research, crunching numbers, and meticulously planning each detail. After countless revisions, I developed a plan I was genuinely proud of. Next, I needed the perfect location. After an exhaustive search, I stumbled upon a small, neglected space that had been vacant for years. The landlord smirked when I shared my vision to transform it into a restaurant. "Good luck with that, sweetheart," he chuckled, handing me the keys. The following 2 months were spent renovating this forgotten space into my dream restaurant. I hired contractors, chose every fixture, and personally cleaned every corner. It was exhausting, physically demanding work, but each blister and bruise felt like a victory. When the grand opening day finally arrived, I stood in my kitchen, my own kitchen, surrounded by a team I had carefully selected and trained. As the first order came in, adrenaline surged through me. "Let's do this," I declared, tying on my apron. The initial months were intense. I worked 20-hour days, juggling cooking, managing, and tackling any task that needed attention. Gradually, the word spread. People didn't just enjoy my food, they loved the passion and creativity I poured into it every day. I introduced a loyalty program for regular customers, offering special discounts and first dibs on new dishes, which became incredibly popular. I soon had a dedicated group of regulars who felt more like family. Not stopping there, I established a delivery service, partnering with local couriers to bring my food directly to customers' homes. Although managing quality control was challenging at first, it proved successful. Social media became a powerful tool for me. I posted daily specials, behind-the-scenes videos from the kitchen, and interacted with customers online, which significantly grew my follower base and, subsequently, my customer base. 3 years in, my business was not only surviving, but turning a profit. It was modest, but it was progress. I began scouting for a second location. Opening another restaurant was simultaneously simpler because I had experience and more challenging, as I couldn't be in 2 places at once. I had to learn to delegate and trust my staff to uphold my standards in my absence. We adapted, and 5 years later, I opened a third location. Before I knew it, I had established a successful chain of restaurants. I, Mia Thompson, had made it against all odds. Running a chain wasn't without its challenges. There were nights I cried from stress, days I doubted myself. But every time I visited my restaurants and saw the joy in my customers' faces and smelled the delightful aromas, I knew all the struggles were worth it. One ordinary Tuesday, while reviewing financials in my office, I received a call from a number I hadn't seen in years. Home. Hesitant, I answered. "Mia," my mum's voice came through, "we need your help. It's about Mila." My dad then explained that Mila had lost her job over accusations of theft and now couldn't find work. They were asking if I could employ her at one of my restaurants. I almost scoffed at their audacity to ask me for a favour after all this time. But then I heard Mila's voice, small and frightened, apologising and asking for help. I took a deep breath, my resolve softening. "Let me talk to her," I said. Despite everything, she was still my sister. I agreed to hire Mila, but made it clear from the start, there will be no special treatment here. Make a mistake and you're out, understood? "Yes, thank you so much, Mia," Mila responded, overflowing with gratitude. The next day, she arrived on time, her face a mix of nerves and resolve of. I started her off as an administrator, giving her simple tasks initially, and gradually increasing her responsibilities. To my surprise, she took her work seriously, paid attention during training, asked insightful questions, and never complained. One evening, as we were wrapping up, Mila suddenly broke down in tears. "I need to tell you the truth," she sobbed. "I didn't steal anything from my last job. My boss, he tried to force himself on me. When I refused, he fired me and spread rumours that I was a thief." A wave of protective anger washed over me. "Why didn't you report him?" I asked. "Who would believe me over him?" she replied, wiping her eyes. "I was so scared, Mia." "I believe you," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And I'm here to help you. We'll figure this out together." Over the following weeks, I dedicated myself to teaching Mila everything about running a restaurant. She absorbed information like a sponge, eager to learn and prove herself. Watching her confidently manage a rush of customers filled me with a mix of pride and unease. Mila was turning out to be a quick learner and a diligent worker, yet a small voice in the back of my mind cautioned me not to let my guard down entirely. Initially, everything seemed perfect. Mila threw herself into her work with a passion I hadn't seen in her before. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, even taking on extra shifts and volunteering for the hardest tasks. But then, whispers began to reach my ears. At first, I dismissed them as petty workplace gossip, but as time passed, the whispers grew louder and more insistent. One day, my head chef pulled me aside. "I think you need to know something. Your sister, she's been stirring up trouble," he said, his expression uneasy. "She's been telling people we're underpaid, that you're hoarding all the profits. She even suggested we should go on strike." I was stunned. "That's ridiculous. You all know how tight our margins are. I've always been transparent about the finances." "We know, boss," Chef assured me. "None of us are buying what she's selling, but there's more." He continued, telling me how Mila had been claiming that the restaurant rightfully belonged to her, that I had somehow cheated her out of her share of the family money. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. After everything we'd been through, after I'd given her a second chance, this is how she repaid me. I confronted Mila that evening, my hands shaking with anger and disappointment. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded. Mila's face was a mask of innocence. "What are you talking about?" I laid out everything I'd heard. To my shock, Mila shrugged. "Oh, that. I was just testing the staff's loyalty, making sure they wouldn't turn on you. Looks like they passed with flying colours." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something in her eyes, a glint of something cold and calculating, that made me hesitate. Before I could question her further, my assistant manager, Ellie, knocked frantically on my office door. "Mia, we've got a problem," she said, pale and scared. "There's a big shortage in the cash register. Over $10,000 missing." We spent the next few hours reviewing the books and checking the numbers. There was no mistake. A significant amount of cash had vanished. Only 4 people had access to that register: Ellie, Chef, and Mila. Ellie and Chef had been with me from the start, through all the ups and downs. I trusted them implicitly. As if reading my thoughts, Mila whispered, "You know, Ellie has been staying late a lot lately, and she did just buy that fancy new car." As Mila walked away, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't ignore this. Too much was at stake. My business, my reputation, the livelihoods of all my loyal employees. Late one night, after everyone had gone home, I installed hidden cameras around the cash registers. It felt wrong, like I was betraying my staff's trust, but I had no choice. For days, I watched hours of mundane footage until on the 4th night, I saw it. Mila, moving quickly and furtively, opened the register and stuffed wads of cash into her pockets. My heart sank. I didn't confront her directly. Instead, I called the police. The next day, as Mila was finishing her shift, 2 officers walked in. The look on her face, shock, then anger, told me everything I needed to know. As the police led Mila away, she lashed out violently, knocking over tables and shattering dishes on the floor. "I deserve this money. I should be rich, not you. You stole my life," she screamed. Watching her being taken away, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness, a void where my love for my sister once resided. The following day, the atmosphere in my restaurant shifted dramatically when my parents burst in. Tears streamed down my mother's face, and my father's complexion was a deep shade of red from his anger. "How dare you!" he bellowed. "Drop the charges against your own sister now!" But I held my ground. "No," I asserted. "She stole from me, and she must face the consequences." I showed them the security footage on my phone of Mila stealing. "Look," I said, "this is what Mila has done. She's a thief." They watched, their faces draining of colour. However, instead of understanding, they became even more defensive. "You set her up," they accused. "You've always been jealous of her." I was astounded by their accusations. "Jealous? Are you serious? After all the scraps you've given me and expected gratitude? No, I'm done. Mila made her choices and now she has to live with them." They continued to rant and rave, swinging between threats and pleas. But I stood firm. "Get out," I demanded. "Leave my restaurant, leave my life. If you don't go now, I'll call the police." They eventually left, but not before my father hissed, "You'll regret this, Mia. Mark my words." The trial that followed was a nightmare. Mila's emotional testimony nearly made me doubt my actions. But then, a surprising witness came forward, her former boss. He testified about her aggressive behaviour at her previous job, how she threatened to accuse him of sexual harassment when he rebuffed her advances, and how she retaliated by stealing from the company. Ultimately, the jury found her guilty. As they escorted her away, she gave me a final look. There was no remorse in her eyes, only a chilling coldness. I haven't spoken to my family since that day. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I question whether I made the right decision. But then I look around at the life I've built for myself, at the restaurant thriving under my guidance, and I feel reassured that I did the right thing. Now, as I stand in the kitchen of my latest restaurant, watching my dedicated staff prepare for another busy evening, a profound sense of peace envelops me. This team, this place, it's my true family now, my real home. And no one, not Mila, not my parents, not anyone can take that away from me. After 5 years of estrangement, my father recently contacted me, leading me to reflect on whether I acted correctly when he and I last parted ways. At the age of 26, shortly after my college graduation, my dad abruptly kicked me out of the house. This sudden decision followed accusations made by my stepmother and stepsister, who claimed I had stolen my stepsister's college savings. This event was the culmination of ongoing tension since my father had remarried. My parents divorced when I was 7, and by the time I was 15, my dad began dating Ellie, my future stepmother. Ellie was a widow, with a daughter Sophia who was 4 years younger than me. From the first meeting, I sensed a reluctance from Ellie and Sophia to accept me, a feeling that persisted and grew over the years. Although I moved out for college, my visits home were fraught with discomfort, as Ellie and Sophia's coldness became increasingly apparent. My father, however, believed they harboured no ill feelings towards me, which only deepened the divide between us. Upon graduation, I returned home with plans to save money for my own place. I hoped to discuss the palpable hostility I felt with my father, but he dismissed my concerns, convinced of Ellie and Sophia's affection towards me. However, it didn't take long to see that their disdain was quite real. Matters escalated when Ellie and Sophia accused me of a grave misdeed. After a day spent house hunting to escape the toxic household atmosphere, I returned home to a grim scene. My father, clearly upset, immediately ordered me to leave, accusing me of stealing Sophia's college fund, an accusation that Ellie amplified with vehement accusations, falsely claiming I had misused access to a financial account meant for emergencies. Confused and hurt by the accusations and my father's readiness to believe them without my side of the story, I was forced to leave, severing ties. Now, after years of reflection and silence from my father, the sudden reconnection brings these old wounds to the forefront, prompting me to question the past and whether I handled the situation as best as I could. I had no idea why my stepmother Ellie accused me of using money meant for her daughter. She claimed I had splurged on expensive brands, funding a shopping spree with cash set aside for her child. This was completely false, yet she convinced my father by planting the purchased items in my room. My protests fell on deaf ears. My father had already sided with her, having found the stash under my bed earlier. When I suggested verifying the accusations with the bank, my father refused, convinced of my guilt. He labelled me a thief, and despite my efforts to prove my innocence, he wouldn't listen. Heartbroken and maligned, I moved out, lost contact with him, and struggled financially for a while. However, I eventually found my footing, built a comfortable life, and even planned to buy a house. For 5 years, I avoided any contact with my father's side of the family. During this time, my mother supported me, having severed ties with him for his treatment of me. Then, unexpectedly, my father showed up at my new home, seeking forgiveness. He had finally learned the truth. Ellie had concocted the whole scenario to cover her misuse of funds meant for her daughter's college. She had bought lavish items for herself and her daughter, then framed me to make my father pay for the expenses, fearing he would see her as a gold digger. Recently, after a dispute with her parents, they revealed everything to my father, exposing Ellie's manipulation. Now, understanding the full extent of her deceit, my father was asking for a chance to make amends. It turned out that my stepmother had been using me as a pawn in her scheme to secure her financial future without exposing her own extravagances. My dad had recently told me that he had filed for divorce from Ellie a few weeks ago with the assistance of his old lawyer. Now, he was looking to mend our relationship. During our conversation, he mentioned that he knew one of my friend's fathers was a well-respected divorce attorney. My dad hoped I would help him connect with this attorney and possibly negotiate a reduced fee because Ellie and her lawyer had crafted a very biased divorce petition. He seemed to believe that an apology might smooth things over, and then he could ask for my help as if nothing had happened between us. The audacity of his request left me so flabbergasted that I couldn't help but laugh before firmly closing the door on him. The idea that after everything he would simply expect me to assist him was absurd to me. If he needed a lawyer, he should reach out himself and pay the standard fees like anyone else would. His current lawyer's reluctance to handle the messy divorce due to complications and impending retirement was not my burden to bear. After shutting the door, I warned him to leave, or I'd call the police. I thought that was the end of it until my mother called. To my surprise, she criticised my decision not to help him. She argued that everyone makes mistakes, including my father, and that it wasn't fair to hold him to a higher standard just because he was my dad. While I understood that people make mistakes, my issue was deeper. It stemmed from his choice to trust Ellie over me, his own daughter, and the hurtful things he had said when he drove me out of our home. Despite it all, he hadn't come just to apologise. He also came wanting my help. I suspected if he hadn't needed something, I wouldn't have seen him at all. It took him 5 years to acknowledge his mistake, and now he was back not just to make amends, but to ask for a favour. I tried to explain to my mother that my reluctance wasn't about his past mistakes, but about how he had prioritised Ellie over me, causing significant emotional pain. She insisted that his admission of his wrongs, albeit delayed, should count for something, and urged me to forgive him and be the bigger person. While I am close to my friend, and it's likely I could talk to him about his father taking on my dad's case, I find myself torn. The emotional toll of reconnecting under these circumstances is daunting. I'm not sure I can simply set aside the past, despite the possible expectations to extend help. I found myself in a heated debate with my mother about whether I should help my estranged father get a cheaper rate from a top divorce attorney. The best lawyers are expensive, and I wasn't even sure if I could manage to convince anyone to lower their fees. My mother couldn't see my perspective, and I struggled to grasp her viewpoint, which seemed completely illogical to me. The argument left us both frustrated and not speaking to each other, and it made me question my decisions. Reflecting on the situation, I wasn't sure if refusing to help my father was wrong, but my mother's reaction suggested otherwise. I felt torn, wondering if maybe I had made a mistake. After some thought and seeing comments from others, I've decided to distance myself from both my parents. It's clear that I owe my father nothing, especially since his apology came so shortly after he realised the truth, indicating he likely wouldn't have reached out if he didn't need something from me. As for my mother, I am puzzled by her sudden support for my father after years of silence between them. During our last conversation, she mentioned that my father had contacted her, tearfully trying to reconnect, which is uncharacteristic of him as he rarely shows his emotions. This was enough for her to listen to him, which led to her finding out about his attempt to apologise to me. Despite this, she claimed they hadn't been in contact for the past 5 years, which I find hard to believe. The whole scenario has made me realise that perhaps my mother doesn't understand me as well as I thought. If she truly knew me, she wouldn't have expected me to forgive my father so readily. For now, I've resolved to keep my distance from both my parents. It's been easy to avoid my father since I've been doing it for 5 years, but distancing myself from my mother will be much harder. She has been my main family connection for years, and losing that bond pains me. I plan to give her a week to reflect and possibly apologize for her reaction. If not, I'll have to accept that my relationship with her may be another casualty in this ongoing family strife. It's a tough situation, but there's not much more I can do. I need to protect my own emotional well-being and move forward with or without their understanding. I've given my mother a week to reconsider her stance and potentially apologize. If she can acknowledge where she might have misunderstood me, that would be wonderful. However, if she doesn't come around, I'm facing the heart-wrenching possibility of having to sever ties permanently. The thought alone is deeply upsetting, but I must prioritize my own well-being. Before the week was up, my mum reached out not with an apology, but with a request to visit and talk things through in person. Hoping for reconciliation, I agreed. When she arrived, she initiated the conversation by admitting she might not have fully tried to understand my perspective during our last discussion. Encouraged, I repeated my feelings, hoping it would pave the way for her apology so we could put this behind us. However, instead of apologizing after hearing me out, she suggested I have the same discussion with my father. She believed that if I could explain myself with composure, it might help mend things. She reminded me that despite his mistakes, believing I had misused Ellie's money, he had protected me from legal consequences, which, in her view, showed he still cared. She pressed that I should at least offer him an explanation, insisting I was raised to be kind and understanding. I was disheartened and told her that she really didn't know me as well as she thought. I felt no obligation to forgive or explain anything to my father, given his past actions. I was hurt that she hadn't apologized for her part in this and told her I would only be willing to communicate further if she was ready to genuinely apologize. As our conversation became more tense, she became visibly nervous and admitted she couldn't leave without fulfilling a promise to my father to persuade me to talk to him. She pleaded with me, saying that families should be there to forgive each other, and it would be tragic to live otherwise. I dismissed this as empty rhetoric and asked her to leave, upset that her visit was more about fulfilling her promise to my father than genuinely repairing our relationship. In that moment, she finally expressed sorrow, realizing perhaps too late that her approach might cause her to lose me. Her apology seemed tied to her obligations to my father, rather than a sincere understanding of my feelings. This realization only added to the complexity of our situation, leaving me to navigate these turbulent family dynamics while trying to protect my emotional health. I felt a deep sense of betrayal from both my parents, but part of me still thought that, as my parents, perhaps I should forgive them. They had, after all, done many things right in the past, and that should count for something. But when my mother tried to use this reasoning to justify her actions, it felt ridiculous to me. I confronted her about making promises to my father that she might not keep, stressing that it wasn't my job to help her fulfill these commitments. The conversation escalated when she admitted she couldn't leave because my father was outside, waiting in the car, hoping to be invited in. This revelation was the last straw for me. I had explicitly told her I didn't want to meet him, yet she disregarded my wishes, thinking she could persuade me otherwise. My frustration boiled over into anger, and I couldn't hold back my emotions. I yelled, telling her she was a terrible mother and declaring that I was done with her. Despite her tears and apologies, my mind was made up. The argument dragged on for about 15 minutes before she finally left, and as she did, I warned her that any return visit from her or my father would prompt me to call the police. After she left, I even considered speaking to a lawyer about obtaining a protective order against them. Then, out of nowhere, another unexpected event unfolded today that added to the chaos. I was enjoying a day off at home, planning a quiet day, when Ellie and her daughter Sophia appeared at my doorstep. Initially, I was ready to send them away immediately, and even started to dial the police. But Ellie quickly interjected, insisting she wasn't there to cause trouble, but rather to reveal some truths about my father, and explain why my mother had suddenly sided with him after years of silence. Her presence was as unpleasant as ever, and initially I had no desire to hear her out. Yet, something she mentioned about my mother caught me off guard and piqued my curiosity. Reluctantly, I listened as she stayed outside, refusing even to enter my house. Ellie shared that a couple of weeks ago, her parents had disclosed some critical information about the incident that had happened 5 years ago to my father, which sparked a series of unexpected revelations and confrontations. This twist in the story was surprising. I hadn't anticipated Ellie, of all people, would come forward with information potentially explaining recent tensions and alignments within my family. Her news was unexpected, complicating my feelings about the family dynamics I thought I understood. Ellie revealed that she had stopped sending money to her parents because my father was no longer giving her the kind of financial support she wanted. She had grown too greedy, and when the funds dwindled, she started investigating. Her snooping led to a shocking discovery. My dad was having an affair with my mother, and she suspected he was stashing money in preparation to leave her. Determined to not be left empty-handed, Ellie decided to stay with him, planning to initiate the divorce on her own terms eventually. However, my dad uncovered her plan, sparking a massive fight that exposed their true motives to each other. Under normal circumstances, my dad could have easily divorced Ellie without much loss, but his own infidelity complicated things. Ellie hadn't worked in 10 years, and she crafted a divorce petition to her advantage, which my dad contested fiercely. Ellie told me all this because recently, my father had threatened her during a phone call, warning her that I was supposed to connect him with a powerhouse divorce attorney, which would leave her in a disadvantageous position. He was bluffing, but Ellie, fearing the worst, decided to tell me everything. I was stunned by these revelations, but they explained my mother's odd behaviour and sudden alliance with my father. After sharing the details, Ellie left it up to me whether I wanted to assist my dad or not. For once, Ellie had actually been useful to me, and I was oddly grateful for her honesty. But this was the final straw with my parents. I couldn't believe my mother had tried to manipulate me into giving my dad another chance for her own selfish reasons. My parents were truly suited for each other, and I was better off without them in my life. I'm living on my own and genuinely enjoying the peace. Occasionally, I miss my mother, but I quickly remind myself of her betrayal, which makes it easier to cope with her absence. I've heard through relatives that my dad and mum are back together and that his divorce with Ellie was finalised a few weeks ago. There's a wedding planned soon, and although I've been informed about it in case I wanted to reconcile, I have no interest in attending or mending things with them. Life on my own has been fulfilling and peaceful. I'm content with where I am, far removed from the drama and manipulation that once dominated my life. I'm Ava, a 27-year-old woman, and my husband John, who is 31, recently tied the knot after 4 years of being together and an 8-month engagement. Our story began when I was managing a bar where John was a regular. Initially, I declined his advances, but his persistence and the nudging of my co-workers, who found his efforts endearing, led me to give him a chance. John is genuinely wonderful. Kind, mature, financially stable, and always planning thoughtful dates. However, there's a complicated aspect to our relationship involving his mother, Sophia. Initially, I got along well with her. Sophia had her heart broken when John's father, James, cheated on her. They were college sweethearts, and his betrayal, followed by a divorce, left deep scars. James, despite his faults, remained an involved father to John, supporting him at school events and encouraging his independence. In contrast, Sophia became overly protective and strict with John, setting numerous restrictions on him like curfews, bans on dating, and even prohibiting him from joining school trips. These rules might sound excessive, but Sophia justified them by saying she was protecting John from the world, perhaps still affected by the past betrayal. John preferred his father's more relaxed approach, and as a teenager he struggled under his mother's rules, which led to constant conflicts about his lifestyle choices. Fast forward to our recent honeymoon plans, a surprising conflict arose. John secretly booked business class seats for himself and his mother, leaving me with an economy ticket. I confronted him in the lounge, surrounded by strangers, questioning why he would make such a decision without discussing it with me first. This incident highlighted the ongoing influence Sophia has in our life, raising questions about boundaries and respect in our marriage. Mila had struggled with fertility issues for years and had reluctantly come to terms with the possibility that she might never have a child of her own. This changed when she met James, who was already a father to a young boy named John. Mila quickly formed a close bond with John, becoming a maternal figure to him, much to his delight. However, this relationship was a source of tension for Sophia, John's biological mother. Sophia was fiercely protective and resistant to the idea of another woman playing a significant role in her son's life. She harbored intense jealousy and frequently argued with John, attempting to undermine Mila's presence by falsely claiming that James had been unfaithful during their marriage. These accusations were unfounded. Mila only entered James's life after his divorce. Sophia's refusal to accept the situation escalated, leading to her obstructing James's visitation rights. She filled John's weekends with disappointment by inventing reasons to prevent him from seeing his father, arguing the uncertainty of Mila's character and deeming her a stranger. As John grew older, the conflicts intensified, especially when it came to his education. At 19, having been accepted to 2 universities, John faced pressure from Sophia to attend a local university so she could maintain close contact. However, John preferred another institution that offered better resources for his intended field of study. After discussing his options with James, who encouraged him to follow his aspirations, regardless of Sophia's wishes, John decided to enroll at the university farther from home. This decision triggered a severe reaction from Sophia. She accused John of betrayal and threatened severe financial and emotional repercussions. In response, James stepped in to help John move out and start his university life independently, offering financial support and assurance against Sophia's threats. During college, John's relationship with his mother reached a standstill. Sophia's communication swung between apologetic and accusatory, causing John emotional turmoil. Despite missing his mother, John chose to maintain distance to protect his well-being. Meanwhile, James remained a constant in John's life, supporting him through his university years. The situation took a dramatic turn when Sophia attempted suicide, leading to her hospitalization and a subsequent diagnosis of bipolar disorder and depression. This crisis became a pivotal moment for John, who blamed himself for his mother's condition. He spent days by her hospital bed, wrestling with guilt and praying for her recovery. Following her release and ongoing treatment, John and Sophia slowly rebuilt their relationship. After graduating, John moved back to his hometown, but chose to live independently, close enough to support his mother while maintaining his own space. This delicate balance allowed him to foster a healthier relationship with Sophia while continuing to grow personally and professionally. Living near his mother, John was just a phone call away should she need him, and she often did, leveraging his proximity since her crisis. John existed in a constant state of worry and obligation toward his mother, perceiving her as exceedingly delicate. Despite his own reservations, he felt compelled to heed her requests and advice, rooted in a deep-seated anxiety and guilt about her well-being. When I first learned about John's situation, I empathized deeply. His mother was regularly attending therapy and checkups, so I hoped she was on a path to improvement. However, upon meeting her, I noticed some unsettling behaviors. She made uncomfortable comments about my appearance and subtly undermined my relationship with John, hinting that he deserved someone better, or making inappropriate remarks about our future children's skin color. At first, I tried to brush off these comments, not wanting to create conflict. As my relationship with John deepened, I observed the toll his mother's emotional dependency took on him. She would call him incessantly, ensuring he had eaten or demanding his immediate attention, claiming ill health. If John missed her calls, she would persist until he answered. After I moved in with John, She even started calling me to inquire why John was unreachable, suggesting I was keeping him from her. John's adherence to his mother's demands often disrupted our plans. He would cancel dates or leave events abruptly to tend to her. If he received recognition at work, she insisted on being his +1, sidelining me. She demanded constant updates on our whereabouts, especially during vacations, claiming it helped her sleep at night. All these dynamics made me uneasy and highlighted John's struggle between his desire for a normal life and his obligation to his mother. Contrastingly, John's father, James, and his wife, Mila, were a breath of fresh air. They were always welcoming and respectful, never prying into our lives unnecessarily. James's genuine interest in me without any judgment was refreshing. It was clear that John had inherited some of James's admirable traits, which reinforced why I chose to stay by John's side through the challenges. I recognized that John needed support, perhaps even therapy, to navigate his complex relationship with his mother. While he insisted he was okay, I encouraged open communication, hoping he would eventually acknowledge his need for professional guidance. When John proposed to me, it was a joyous surprise that became one of the happiest days of my life. He had arranged for my parents and best friend to fly in for the occasion, ensuring they were part of our special day. James and Mila were also there, offering heartfelt congratulations. The only absence was Sophia, and while her non-presence was felt, John explained the situation. Through all this, I understood more deeply the intricate dynamics of John's familial relationships and the emotional burden he carried. I remained committed, hoping together we could build a future that balanced his obligations with our collective happiness. Sophia was reportedly unwell on the day John proposed to me, and while it may sound harsh, I felt relieved that she wasn't there to potentially make awkward comments in front of my parents. We were celebrating when John received a distressing call from the hospital about Sophia having a fall. Naturally, we all rushed to be with her, but once there, Sophia insisted that only John could see her, leaving the rest of us waiting outside. This seemed unusual, especially since we had all come to support her, but it didn't seem appropriate to question it at the time. John later emerged to tell us that Sophia had a fracture and needed to stay in the hospital overnight. She requested that John stay with her. James, trying to be helpful, offered to stay instead, suggesting John go home with me. However, John declined, worried about upsetting his mother further. As a result, we returned home, and my parents and best friend, who had intended to stay in hotel rooms, ended up spending the night at my place, supporting me through my disappointment. This episode should have been an early warning of the challenges ahead. As we began planning our wedding, Sophia's influence was pervasive. She had opinions on everything, from my wedding dress to the guest list, and even the suit John should wear. Her presence felt overbearing, affecting every detail of our preparations. John and I had dreamed of honeymooning in Hawaii, but Sophia pushed for a closer destination, claiming a distant trip was unnecessary. Finally, I stood my ground, explaining firmly yet respectfully that the honeymoon was our decision. Sophia reacted poorly, accusing me of disrespect and exclusion. Her response was tearful, painting herself as a victim being pushed away by my actions. Despite my efforts to accommodate her wishes throughout the wedding planning, I was adamant about our honeymoon. Feeling torn, John tried to mediate, but Sophia positioned herself as a martyr, sacrificing her relationship with her son. In a bid to smooth things over, I texted her an apology, acknowledging her importance to John. However, her reply was dismissive, insisting that no woman could replace her in John's life and that I should learn my place. I showed John the message, prompting him to confront his mother. Yet, she accused me of sowing discord and insisted that John should always trust her above anyone else. This situation became increasingly uncomfortable for me, and I began to realize just how complex and strained the dynamics were in John's family. It was clear that navigating this relationship would require careful consideration and perhaps more boundaries to ensure our future happiness together. After John's phone call with his mother, he reassured me that we would stick to our original honeymoon plan in Hawaii, which lifted my spirits. It felt like John was finally asserting himself against his mother's influence, allowing us to enjoy our special time together. Our wedding proceeded beautifully, and despite Sophia making a speech that centered largely on her own sacrifices, I chose to focus on the joyous aspects of the day. Everyone, including my parents, James, Mila, and the rest of our guests, enjoyed the celebration, and we spent the night dancing and reveling in our new beginning. The morning of our departure for Hawaii, I woke up filled with excitement. John and I prepared eagerly for the airport, but upon arriving, I was stunned to learn that John had booked himself into business class while I was in economy. This was a complete surprise, as I would have gladly paid for both of us to travel in business class, and John had taken it upon himself to arrange the entire trip, so I had assumed we would be seated together. When I confronted him, John mentioned he had snagged a last-minute deal on his seat, but couldn't find another in business class for me. His avoidance of eye contact and dismissive attitude raised my suspicions. He insisted it wasn't a big deal and suggested I was being overly sensitive. Frustrated and hurt, I proposed switching seats, arguing that if it truly wasn't a big deal, he could travel in economy. This suggestion irritated him further, and he left for the business class lounge, leaving me to wait alone. Trying to keep my composure and not wanting to start our honeymoon on a negative note, I freshened up and settled in the waiting area, though John continued to ignore my calls. My unease grew until I received an unexpected call from Sophia. She began questioning my whereabouts in a way that seemed more intrusive than casual curiosity. Frustrated by the day's events and Sophia's probing, I confronted her directly, asking what she wanted. With a taunting tone, Sophia revealed that she was also coming on our honeymoon. I was astonished and upset by her announcement, feeling my anger boil over. I cut the call short and headed to the business class lounge to confront John. After some persistence, security allowed me inside, where I found John casually scrolling through his phone, clearly having ignored my earlier attempts to contact him. Surprised to see me with security, John immediately sensed something was amiss. I asked him directly if it was true that Sophia was joining us on our honeymoon trip. His shocked expression confirmed my fears. I questioned him about the separate ticket, suspecting that it was part of a plan to accommodate his mother's sudden inclusion in our plans. This confrontation marked a critical moment in our relationship, as it underscored the ongoing struggle between his loyalty to his mother and his commitment to our marriage. It was clear that setting boundaries with Sophia would be crucial if we were to navigate our future together without continual overreach into our personal lives. When John and I reached the airport lounge, the situation escalated quickly. John had booked business class for himself while placing me in economy, a detail he had kept hidden. As we discussed this disparity, Sophia entered, visibly searching for John. Seeing us together, she froze. John explained that he had initially booked economy seats just for us, but Sophia's tears and pleas led him to book her on the same flight without my knowledge. He claimed he had arranged a separate hotel for Sophia, ensuring she wouldn't intrude on our honeymoon. Despite his reassurances, the situation was far from acceptable. Sophia approached and began justifying her inclusion on our trip, praising John's devotion to her. My patience shattered. If it weren't for the public setting of the airport, I might have lost complete control. Instead, I loudly expressed my frustration to John, embarrassed to be married to someone who seemed incapable of independence from his mother. John, concerned with the opinions of onlookers, suggested we postpone our discussion until Hawaii. I countered sarcastically, suggesting he enjoy the trip with his mommy, since our marriage seemed a farce. Stunned, Sophia and John watched as I tore up my tickets and arranged a cab home. John chose not to go on the honeymoon either, and returned home, where he criticised my reaction, defending his decisions. Distraught, I locked myself away to cry, unable to face him. The incident left our marriage in ruins. The next few days were a haze of pain and confusion. I turned to an online community for support, where I shared my story. The overwhelming response encouraged me to have one final talk with John. If he continued siding with his mother, our marriage would be untenable. Sophia's choice to travel alone to Hawaii, knowing the chaos she had caused, only solidified her disregard for our relationship. A month later, after processing the advice from countless strangers online, I decided it was time for a decisive conversation with John. I prepared for this talk, knowing it could either mend or end our marriage. When John arrived home and saw me waiting, a mix of surprise and worry crossed his face. I invited him to sit and offered him a glass of water. The tension was palpable as we prepared to address the issues that could redefine our future together. Since the incident, John and I hadn't been communicating much because he felt that I owed him an apology. However, taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to open up about everything, starting from the very beginning of our relationship. I shared how his mother's presence had always made me uncomfortable, and how John's demeanour seemed to change when she was around. He would transform into a completely different person, one I barely recognised. I expressed the immense guilt he seemed to carry, influenced by his mother's constant reminders of the sacrifices she had made for him, and how this was chipping away at the foundation of our relationship. Tears welled up in my eyes as I recounted the constant interference by his mother, not just in our wedding plans, but also in our honeymoon. I told him that while I had fallen in love with his kindness and sweetness, the dynamic with his mother was eroding what we had built together. As I poured out my emotions, I saw that John too had tears streaming down his face. It was shocking to see him break down. He admitted that he hadn't realised how deeply this was affecting me since the beginning of our relationship. John confessed that he had become so accustomed to taking care of his mother, always living in fear that something bad might happen to her. His tears flowed as he described the constant internal struggle he faced, having been conditioned to prioritise her needs above everything and everyone else. He explained that he knew bringing his mother on our honeymoon was wrong, but he had caved under her guilt-tripping, thinking it would just keep the peace. I pointed out that if his mother truly wanted to be close to him, she wouldn't have gone to Hawaii after causing such turmoil. John nodded, acknowledging that he had been blind to her manipulations until now. The weight of his emotions was palpable as he knelt down, apologising repeatedly. This broke my heart, and I hugged him, realising the immense suffering he had endured. It became clear that John needed counselling, and I was ready to support him through this marriage, as long as he was willing to work on these issues. In the following 3 weeks, John made an appointment and began seeing a behavioural therapist. He also had a heartfelt conversation with his father, James, who was unaware of the incident. James was taken aback that Sophia had caused so much distress and echoed my sentiments, advising John that it was time for him to live his life unapologetically. With the guidance of his behavioural therapist, John decided to go low contact with his mother, recognising the need for space to sort out his own thoughts. This was going to be a difficult decision since his mother kept calling him incessantly. He hadn't told her about seeing a behavioural therapist, fearing her reaction, but he planned to tell her that weekend to give him the space he needed. If she refused, he was prepared to block her to safeguard his mental health. Overall, while the journey was fraught with challenges, I felt a glimmer of hope that John was finally taking steps to assert his independence and prioritise our marriage. This has been a significant turning point and the right step towards healing our relationship. The journey hasn't been easy, but for the first time, it feels like we're moving in the right direction. 5 months have passed since my last update, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has followed my story and offered support. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, and your encouragement has been invaluable. John did have that difficult conversation with his mother after consulting with his behavioural therapist. As expected, it didn't go smoothly. She unleashed a barrage of accusations, screaming and yelling at him, blaming me for distancing him from her. She even insisted that he should divorce me, claiming that I was the reason for their strained relationship and that they were much happier before I came into the picture. However, John finally stood his ground. He firmly told her that he would no longer tolerate her manipulative behaviour and made it clear that she needed to respect our relationship and boundaries. Following this, John took a decisive step. He blocked his mother's number. I did the same. This move was necessary for the health of our relationship and our personal sanity. Naturally, his mother began to vent to anyone who would listen, complaining about being abandoned by her son and portraying herself as a victim. The gossip and rumours inevitably reached us through various acquaintances and family members, but we stayed strong and focused on our happiness. During this time, James, John's father, has been instrumental. He occasionally checks up on John's mother, ensuring she is okay and taking her medications regularly. Since cutting ties with his mother, John has shown a noticeable improvement in his emotional well-being. The cloud of anxiety and guilt that lingered over him has dissipated. We've started going out for date nights again, now without the constant interruption of his mother's calls. This has allowed us to truly enjoy each other's company. Regarding our honeymoon, John wanted to make things right and surprised me with a new trip to Hawaii. This time, both of us flying business class together. It was the peaceful and romantic getaway we had envisioned. A wonderful vacation that helped to strengthen our bond and create positive memories together. Overall, I feel a renewed sense of happiness and optimism for our future. The growth and commitment my husband has shown to our relationship have been clearly evident. If there are further developments, I'll be sure to update you all. Thank you once again for your support and kindness throughout this challenging time. After enduring years of toxic behaviour from my stepmother, the situation escalated recently, prompting my wife and I to cut ties with her completely. My stepmother, who fancied herself as a party planner, has always taken charge of every family event since marrying my father. Despite her controlling nature, I tolerated her antics for my father's sake, as he believed it helped her feel included in our family. However, when it came to planning my upcoming wedding with my fiancée Ella, my stepmother's interference became unbearable. She constantly complained, meddled with our wedding planner, and even showed up unannounced at Ella's dress fittings. We had asked her multiple times to step back, but to no avail. My father, unfortunately, wanted us to appease her to keep the peace. Tensions reached a breaking point last Sunday. My father had agreed to babysit at our home while we were out. We returned to find a chaotic scene. Both children were crying, and my stepmother was in a full rage. She had exploded upon learning that William, Ella's 4-year-old half-brother whom we are raising, and our son would both be ring bearers at the wedding. She vehemently objected, claiming William wasn't real family, and even physically hurt him during her outburst. We were shocked and heartbroken. Immediately, we banned her from our home and the upcoming wedding. My father was upset and, influenced by my stepmother, even convinced some family members to side with her and boycott our wedding. Despite the pressure from some family members to reconcile, Ella and I stood firm in our decision, prioritizing the safety and well-being of our children. I've come to realize that protecting my family must come first, even if it means having a strained relationship with my father. We have since pressed charges against my stepmother after confirming William's injuries with a general paediatrician and reviewing nanny cam footage. While we have limited contact with my father and continue to navigate this challenging time, our focus remains steadfast on healing and moving forward with our lives. This experience has solidified our resolve to maintain boundaries and to not tolerate harmful behaviour, regardless of familial ties. Ella and I are committed to a peaceful and loving environment for our children, and we will not compromise on their safety and happiness. It's important to share that while my family deeply respects my dad, their feelings toward my stepmother are quite mixed. She had 2 failed marriages before she met my dad. Her earlier relationship ended dramatically when she left her boyfriend for my father, a boyfriend who was well liked by everyone in our family. This certainly didn't help stepmother's case, and her controlling and manipulative demeanour only worsened their perception of her. Stepmother attempted to assert herself in our family by overtaking every event planning role she could, thriving on the attention and praise that came with it. This caused many family gatherings, like Christmas and our birthdays, to feel overshadowed by her presence. The rest of the family remained largely indifferent, though they never really warmed up to her. However, her behaviour towards William, my nephew, was perhaps the most telling. Despite the family's instant affection for William, stepmother seemed resentful, likely feeling overshadowed due to her own strained acceptance within the family. When wedding plans were underway, stepmother's attempts to dominate were thwarted. She wanted to be overly involved, even suggesting she officiate, despite us already having someone else in mind. Her suggestions, including wanting my father to walk my bride down the aisle instead of her own brother, who we had chosen, were seen as attempts to insert herself where she was not wanted. The final straw was a concerning incident involving William, which led to a family fallout. My father and stepmother denied any wrongdoing, but the family knew the truth and sided with us, except for a few who chose to stay out of the conflict. This division has been painful, particularly as it has led to cutting ties with certain family members who refuse to see the situation clearly. Despite these challenges, our immediate family and Ella's relatives have been incredibly supportive, providing us with the emotional and logistical support we needed. It has been tough, and the journey of healing for William and coming to terms with our family dynamics continues. Through all of this, Ella and I have found strength in each other and in the love from those who truly support us. We're moving forward, cautious but hopeful, cherishing the peace we've managed to secure amidst the chaos. During this challenging period, I've been grappling with intense emotions, and the weight of them has left me struggling to find peace. Ella, my partner, has been recovering steadily and is encouraging me to start therapy. While I've had psychiatric help when I was younger, revisiting therapy now seems timely given everything we're facing. Despite some well-meaning advice from outsiders to reconcile, forgiving my father and especially wedding planning is something I can't see myself doing. My father's possibility of forgiveness remains uncertain, but forgiving stepmother is completely off the table. Even though our wedding planning continues amidst these personal upheavals, we're steadfast in keeping our original date. It suits our guests, and we've made our arrangements clear with our vendors to avoid any unwanted interference. Ella's family is more involved in our wedding due to their close-knit nature. My family, though less involved, still participates meaningfully. My sister will be a bridesmaid, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mother will join the wedding procession. Going through these motions with Ella has only deepened my appreciation for her. She's truly the partner I've always hoped for, and facing these adversities together has only solidified our bond. An unexpected situation arose when we had to attend a court hearing concerning wedding planning, his actions towards our child. It was the first time we'd seen wedding planning, and my father since the incident. Thankfully, the hearing was swift. The judge granted us a restraining order against wedding planning due to the overwhelming evidence we presented, including nanny cam footage and medical records. This decision has brought us a great sense of relief and security. Later, my father reached out. Despite the restraining order not extending to him, his conversation attempted to downplay wedding planning's actions and plead her case. However, I stood firm, recounting numerous instances where wedding planning had overstepped boundaries or behaved inappropriately, not just recently, but throughout our history with her. This conversation reaffirmed my decision to distance ourselves from her toxic influence. My sister has also decided to cease contact with our father, concluding that he is unlikely to change. This realization is painful but necessary as we prioritize the well-being and safety of our family. Now, with these matters momentarily settled, I find myself contemplating sharing more stories about our experiences with wedding planning, though this may take some time. As always, I extend my best wishes to everyone and appreciate the ongoing support. I might not update again until after the wedding unless something significant occurs. During this emotional and hectic time, the news of our expected baby didn't seem to stir much interest in wedding planning initially, especially compared to her enthusiasm for my stepbrother's engagement, who she hoped would provide her with a grandchild soon. Our own baby shower planning was already complex, as Ella and I were working up until the holidays, with our baby due in January 2023. We settled on an early January baby shower and decided it would be a cosy, co-ed event held indoors, considering the cold weather. We planned a laid-back pizza party theme since homemade pizza nights had become a cherished tradition in our home. The idea was to have fun without excessive spending, as we were saving for the baby and our upcoming wedding. The event venue we chose had a pizza oven, and our planners, my sister Ava and Ella's best friend Mia, came up with creative ideas to blend pizza-themed decorations with classic baby shower elements like customizable plain bodysuits for kids and pizza-shaped sweets. However, when my stepbrother's fiancée unexpectedly left him, wedding planning's focus shifted dramatically towards our baby shower. With her own grandparent dreams delayed, she suddenly transformed into an overzealous grandmother-to-be. She started posting excessively about it on social media and even bought Nana shirts. Despite our insistence on no gender reveal and our decision to not learn the baby's sex until birth, wedding planning pressed us to find out and share the information as a Christmas gift. We stood firm on our privacy. She attempted to involve herself in the baby shower planning, suggesting to my father that she should help, which he relayed to Ava. Out of politeness, and because Ava still lived with them at the time, she agreed to meet wedding planning for coffee. During this meeting, wedding planning presented a lavishly detailed plan from a binder she had prepared, which was more suited to an extravagant party than our casual gathering. Her vision included oversized teddy bears, giant alphabet blocks, and a strict pink and gold colour scheme that screamed excess rather than comfort. The proposed menu featured items Ella couldn't eat, like soft cheeses, and the setup included uncomfortable seating. Wedding planning insisted on an all-female, child-free party with upscale caterers and alcohol, excluding important family members from the guest list, and planning games that no one was interested in. Once Ava and Mia finally had a chance to present their simpler, pizza party-themed plan, they tried to compromise by incorporating some of wedding planning's ideas. But the core of the event remained unchanged. As the baby shower approached, we managed to integrate a bit of the decor wedding planning liked by balancing her preferred pink with some blue, and including one of the oversized teddy bears she favoured. By the week of the shower, everything was set, guests had confirmed, and we were ready for a joyful celebration focused on love and family, not extravagance. Wedding planning got involved on the day of the event, helping to set up early at the venue, a concession made to keep peace. In the end, the baby shower was a delightful blend of our laid-back style and a touch of the fanciful elements wedding planning liked, showing that, even in challenging family dynamics, compromises could be found. The important thing was that Ella and I were surrounded by loved ones as we celebrated the upcoming arrival of our baby, anchored in our values and preferences. 3 days before our baby shower, an unexpected twist emerged. The venue called Mia to report that wedding planning had dropped off several heavy boxes early, claiming they contained a little surprise for the event. She had informed the venue staff of her intention to arrive at 4 to 10 p.m. to start setting up. However, since the venue was booked only from 3:10 p.m. onwards, this plan was a concern, especially as wedding planning had nearly thrown a fit when informed that all official decor was still with Mia. Concerned about wedding planning's intentions, my sister Ava, who was quite adept at handling wedding planning's antics, visited the venue the next day to inspect the boxes. Unsurprisingly, they were filled with the overly pink frilly decorations wedding planning had initially proposed, balloons, placemats, and all sorts of pink paraphernalia that echoed the Barbie hell theme she seemed fond of. Realising wedding planning's plan to preemptively decorate the venue with her setup, Ava and Mia brainstormed how to handle the situation without causing a scene. Discarding wedding planning's decorations was an option, but Ava had a more tactful solution. she invited wedding planning to a salon, leveraging a fabricated story about having coupons, planning their outing right after wedding planning finished her setup. On the day of the shower, wedding planning arrived at the venue early as planned and quickly set up her pink wonderland by 6:10 p.m. Once she left for the salon with Ava, Ella, Mia and I headed to the venue. We had 5 hours to transform the space. We swiftly dismantled wedding planning's setup, replacing everything with our pizza party theme, laid back, fun, and devoid of overwhelming pink. We managed to redo the venue just in time for the shower, keeping the atmosphere light and enjoyable with pizza-making activities and casual decor. The guests began to arrive, and by the time wedding planning returned with Ava, the place was completely transformed. Wedding planning's reaction was one of shock and disbelief, barely able to comprehend the absence of her pink decorations. Ava, maintaining a cool demeanour, simply whispered, "Nice try," to wedding planning, leaving her to process the change. The baby shower turned out to be a wonderful evening filled with laughter, crafts, and plenty of pizza. Although wedding planning spent most of the event sulking in a corner, her efforts to sneak pink bows onto the cupcakes were quickly thwarted by Mia. The day was a success thanks to Ava and Mia's quick thinking, and our collective efforts to keep the party true to our vision. Post-shower wedding planning, as enthusiasm for her role as Nana waned significantly. She stopped wearing the Nana shirts, didn't visit us at the hospital, and generally withdrew from engaging with our new family dynamic. The event made it clear that our family celebrations would remain on our terms, reflecting our preferences and inclusive of those who genuinely support us. In the weeks following the baby shower, wedding planning's presence in our lives diminished significantly, and it was weeks before she discovered our baby was a boy during a brief and awkward visit. This encounter only underscored her superficial connection to her role as a grandmother, a role she never genuinely embraced or defined. The baby shower itself took place at 8:10 p.m, a timing dictated more by venue availability and the need for ample setup time than by preference. It turned out to be a gathering mostly of adults, as William was the youngest there, with other children being much older. Many parents opted to leave early, which kept the atmosphere relatively relaxed and adult-oriented. This wasn't exactly a child-free event, but it was tailored to accommodate the guests who could attend, acknowledging that not everyone on our guest list could make it. Fast forward to recent times, wedding planning has effectively exited our lives, which feels like a tremendous relief. Ella and I recently tied the knot, transitioning to calling each other husband and wife, a change we're both savouring. The wedding was a beautiful celebration, filled with joy, family reunions, and plenty of dancing, so much so that I was sore the next day. William, ever the responsible ring bearer, took great care in his duties, and despite a little overindulgence from my aunt, the day unfolded smoothly. It's been 4 months since we secured the restraining order against wedding planning, and peace has largely been restored, though not perfectly so. I didn't anticipate wedding planning would risk showing up at our wedding given the legal restrictions, and she didn't. We had prepared for all eventualities with adequate security measures, a decision I don't regret as it ensured our special day was undisturbed. Our only recent contact with my stepbrother was an exchange of birthday wishes and a text to Ella on her birthday, maintaining a cordial but distant relationship. My father, on the other hand, has stopped trying to reach out after multiple failed attempts and a significant fallout with my sister, who has chosen to limit contact after their last heated argument. This argument laid bare long-standing grievances, with my father unyieldingly defending wedding planning. Despite everything, there remains a complicated love for my father, a door not fully closed, but no longer open as it once was. He knows the steps necessary to mend our relationship, but until then, my sister and I continue to navigate our lives with the support of each other and our families, cherishing the tranquility that has followed our firm boundaries. I'm not entirely convinced he will change, but I'm holding on to a sliver of hope, perhaps due to my wife's influence. I'm naturally more skeptical, but maybe there's value in keeping that hope alive. Ella hasn't forgiven him or wedding planning, especially because of how protective she is over William. This whole ordeal has rattled her deeply, and there was a moment when I feared she might blame me. That fear was put to rest humorously when she called me a dumbass for even suggesting it. Therapy has been a surprising journey for me. It has opened my eyes to just how negatively wedding planning's behaviour impacted me growing up, more than I ever admitted to myself before. It's been incredibly freeing to express these long-buried feelings. Right now, life feels more fulfilling than I ever imagined. I've married an amazing woman and have the family I've always wanted. We're not without our flaws, but life has turned out to be wonderfully generous to me. I thought I would be less active on Reddit after settling down, but it turns out I've got a bit more to share, thanks to the unexpected support from the community here. Your advice and kindness over these past months have been invaluable. So, while I initially thought this update would be my last, there's a bit more to tell. Earlier today, my stepbrother reached out to me. After a heated argument with wedding planning, he wants to meet for coffee, just the two of us, to talk things over. We're scheduled to meet on Wednesday, and while I'm open to hearing him out, any apology will need to be backed by a real understanding of how he let us down. On a logistical note, Ella and I are off to our honeymoon this Friday, so I've decided to push back the meetup with my stepbrother. I want to enjoy our time away without the shadow of this meeting hanging over us. He was understanding, and we've agreed to talk after I return. Final update. It's been a while since I've been active here due to work commitments, but I know some of you are curious about how things have been with my stepbrother. We finally met for that coffee back in August. It turns out wedding planning had lied to him about several incidents involving William, painting a false picture that led to their argument. That confrontation with reality prompted my stepbrother to start questioning his relationship with wedding planning and everything he'd been led to believe about us. Over the last few months, we've been cautiously rebuilding our relationship, meeting regularly to discuss the past and heal. Ella joined these meetings in October, and our kids reconnected with him just 3 weeks ago. It was awkward at first, but we're finding our way back to a good place. He's also making amends with my sister, and they've been working through their shared history. As for our personal updates, William turned 5 in September, and our youngest will be 3 in January. Time really flies. We're spending the holidays with Ella's family in Brazil, which we're looking forward to. My stepbrother will be staying with his girlfriend, and things on that front are looking up. Just over a month ago, I, a 26-year-old woman, organised a retirement celebration for my father. He was stepping down as manager of our family-owned restaurant, a role he had dedicated his life to, and at nearly 59, he felt it was time to pass the reins to the younger generation. I had naturally assumed I would be his successor, especially since I had devoted the last 3 years of my life to our restaurant. Our family business began with a single Italian restaurant founded by my grandfather. This original location grew under my father's leadership, eventually expanding into a chain with 3 additional locations managed by relatives. Despite the growth, our original restaurant remained the most popular and was the centerpiece of our family's legacy. When my father announced his retirement a few weeks before the party, I fully expected to take over. My uncle, who was slightly younger than my dad but also nearing retirement, wasn't considered a candidate, nor was his daughter, who had only 3 years of managerial experience at one of our new locations. Given my commitment and tenure, it seemed obvious to me that I would lead our family's flagship restaurant into its next chapter. However, at his retirement party, my father surprised everyone by naming my younger brother William, who is 28, as his successor. William, unlike our eldest brother John, a dedicated cardiothoracic surgeon, has shown little interest or success in any profession. Despite his lack of experience and a poor work ethic, he was chosen to lead our family business, a decision that both shocked and disappointed me. William's leadership quickly proved problematic. A month into his management, he nearly caused a serious incident with a customer who had allergies, a clear sign of his inexperience. With the restaurant's reputation at risk, my father pleaded for me to return and salvage the situation. My brother's previous track record was far from impressive. After finishing community college, he had been fired from multiple jobs due to his attitude problems and inability to maintain employment. Despite his lack of skills and problematic behavior, our parents had always coddled him, hoping positive reinforcement would motivate him to carve out a respectable career path. Now, as I consider my father's request to step in and fix the mess, I am torn. The decision not only impacts the business's future, but also forces me to confront unresolved issues about family dynamics and my own career aspirations. He has struggled significantly and seems lost in his direction. For the past few years since his dismissal from his previous employment, he has been largely inactive, living at his parents' expense without much guilt or regret, which is quite troubling. It's even more frustrating that our parents haven't addressed this issue, especially considering how they always motivated us to strive for excellence. It's not that I'm ungrateful. Both John and I have managed to carve out successful paths for ourselves. However, it's disheartening to see such leniency extended towards William. As children, William and I shared a strong bond, but since high school, our paths have diverged significantly. He lacks any real experience or understanding of the family business. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, my father recently announced William would inherit the business. This was shocking as I had been deeply involved in the business, effectively acting as my father's right hand, and had naturally assumed I would take over. We never explicitly discussed succession, which I regret. I assumed my involvement and the responsibilities my father entrusted to me indicated I would lead after his retirement. The announcement at the party, naming William as his successor, left me and everyone else in utter disbelief. After dedicating 3 years to the business, ensuring its success, it was William who was chosen. Following the announcement, I was devastated and left the celebration in tears. My father later explained his decision, suggesting that giving William this responsibility might compel him to mature and take his duties seriously. He hoped managing the business would motivate William to improve, given that he would now be directly invested in its success. Despite this, my father wants me to continue at the restaurant, supporting William as I did for him. This felt like a demotion, reducing me to an assistant's role when I was fully capable of leading. This was not only insulting, but also dismissive of my contributions and capabilities. I am not just my brother's caretaker. I am a competent individual in my own right. After years of dedication and hard work, I felt I had rightfully earned a leadership position within our family business. However, my father decided to pass this role to my brother William, who, in my view, was far less prepared for the responsibility. This decision deeply upset me, and despite my father's explanation that he hoped the responsibility would spur William to mature, I found it unacceptable. I expressed my feelings clearly, telling my father that he needed to reconsider or risk losing me. This ultimatum led to a severe argument where he accused me of being selfish and not considering my brother's future. I countered that he was ignoring my future, leading to an irreparable rift between us. Following that, I decided to cut off communication with him, as I could not stand by his decision to undermine my efforts and capabilities by favouring William. The day after my father's retirement party marked my last day at the restaurant. It's been a month since I stepped foot there, maintaining only indirect contact through my mother and John. I've avoided discussing the restaurant as it remains a painful subject for me. Since leaving, I have begun seeking employment elsewhere, relying on my savings in the interim. I had even planned a trip to clear my mind, but recent events might force me to reconsider. William's inexperienced management has led to a significant oversight that could jeopardize the restaurant's reputation and financial stability. He made several poor decisions, including closing a dedicated vegan preparation area and adulterating vegan products to cut costs. These changes culminated in a severe incident where a customer, allergic to dairy, was served a dessert made with regular dairy milk instead of the requested soy milk. This occurred because William had instructed new staff to strictly follow his cost-saving measures, neglecting customer needs and safety. The situation escalated quickly when the customer suffered a severe allergic reaction, now posing a legal threat to the business. This debacle confirms my fears about William's lack of suitability for managing the business. Now, I face a difficult decision: whether to step back into a chaotic situation to help salvage the family business or continue on my new path, distancing myself from the turmoil William has created. After tirelessly working and proving my dedication, I felt deeply wronged when the leadership position I deserved was handed to my brother, William. Despite his lack of readiness and my prior predictions of failure, my father chose him over me. True to my fears, William's mismanagement led to a serious incident at the restaurant, prompting my father to call me, desperate for help. He informed me that he had fired William after discovering the extent of his incompetence and was now offering me the position I had initially been denied. Despite my hurt, I found a small satisfaction in the irony of the situation and initially laughed off his request for me to return. I felt a public apology was necessary, not just as a personal vindication, but to correct the disrespect shown at the retirement party. I demanded that he make this apology in front of our employees and family, to openly acknowledge his mistake in choosing William, and to formally offer me the position. My father, however, found my demands excessive and humiliating. He refused, stating the business was as much mine as his, and that he recognized his mistake, but could not subject himself to public embarrassment. This response only added to the complexity of my emotions. In the following days, I received tremendous support from the online community, which helped me reflect on my decisions and the bigger picture. I realized that despite the deep personal wounds, the business, which I had devoted 3 years of my life to, still mattered profoundly to me. My passion for our family restaurant outweighed my bruised ego. My uncle and cousin, from other branches of our business, also encouraged me to return, highlighting that the survival and success of the restaurant depended largely on my involvement. After much contemplation, I decided to set aside my pride and accept my father's request to help manage the crisis. We agreed to focus on resolving the immediate issues rather than dwell on past conflicts. This morning, I spoke formally with my father. We agreed to leave our disagreements behind for now and prioritize the restaurant's stability. We planned a meeting with our lawyers and the affected customer to negotiate a settlement and hopefully resolve the matter discreetly, as she had already begun to draw public attention through social media. Seeing my father in person after such a long time was unexpectedly emotional. I realized how much I had missed his presence in my daily life, despite the recent strife. This reunion, under such strained circumstances, underscored the complex layers of family and business, reminding me of the importance of balancing personal convictions with pragmatic decisions to safeguard our shared legacy. When I finally saw my father in person after our significant fallout, it was a bit awkward. Our interaction was largely silent, primarily because our lawyer did most of the talking due to the serious nature of the meeting. I sensed there were many unresolved issues between us that needed addressing, but it wasn't the right time or place. Although he hadn't fully apologized or discussed the incident from a month ago, the atmosphere was surprisingly civil for our first in-person meeting since the argument. After the meeting concluded, my dad invited me to come home to see my mum, as it had been quite some time since our last visit. However, I had to decline because I had already committed to attending a friend's engagement party that evening. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked if William would be at home. My dad confirmed he wouldn't be, but he didn't elaborate on William's current situation or whereabouts, and I chose not to press further. I did, however, discuss this with John, who mentioned William had moved out shortly after being fired, though it was unclear whether it was his decision or our parents'. The meeting itself, concerning the recent restaurant incident, went surprisingly well. The customer had been vocal on social media, threatening legal action because, post-incident, the management tried to blame her for not specifying her dairy allergy and needing soy milk. This mismanagement escalated her frustration, knowing she wasn't at fault. learning the full extent of William's mishandling during the meeting was eye-opening. The waiter involved, fearful of losing his job, had sided with William, and the new employee William had hired was too aligned with him to admit the truth. Thankfully, we reached a settlement with the customer. She agreed to remove her social media posts about the incident, which was a relief. Although it was an expensive fix, it was necessary to rectify the mess William had caused and to prevent further damage to our family's restaurant reputation. It's been a month since I returned to working at the restaurant, and I've realised just how much I missed it. Despite the past issues with my father, I love this place and am eager to elevate it to new heights. My relationship with my father is also on the mend. We're making progress and have agreed that spending more quality time as a family is crucial. Rejoining the restaurant has not only brought me back to my passion, but has also allowed me to reconnect with my family. We are taking active steps to strengthen our bonds and ensure that both our business and family relationships thrive. This experience has taught me the importance of facing challenges head-on and the value of forgiveness and resilience in personal and professional life. A couple of weeks ago, I had a revealing conversation with my dad. Now that I was returning to work at the restaurant, he expressed deep regrets about past family dynamics. He and my mum acknowledged that William had always been the less accomplished among us siblings, and their attempts to boost his confidence to help him feel equal had inadvertently inflated his ego to an unsustainable level. This realization came into sharp focus the day my father had to fire him, which was a significant blow to William's pride, prompting him to move out and cut ties with the family. Since then, my father learned through mutual connections that William was now living with a friend and had taken a job at a local grocery store. It was a relief to know he was making an effort to stand on his own 3 feet. Meanwhile, our family, including John and his wife, continued our tradition of gathering for dinner every weekend. We've invited William multiple times, extending an olive branch, but he has chosen not to respond. I've made peace with his decision. While I wish him well, I'm content to keep our lives separate. Reconnecting with my family has been incredibly positive for me. My relationship with my dad has steadily improved, bringing a sense of normalcy and warmth that I had missed. Life has been very fulfilling lately. I'm back doing what I love, passionately working on building something meaningful at the restaurant. It's a joy to be back on good terms with my family. To me, this blend of personal satisfaction and familial harmony is essential for happiness.